Hello everyone, my name is Amanda and I am the Latin American paper packaging economist. The main objective of this presentation today is to introduce a just released special study, the outlook for Brazil's paper packaging market. I will also give some key highlights on the topics covered in this study and the new information that it brings. In this next slide, we see more details about this study. First of all, I think that this is a pretty good source for those that are new to the Brazilian market, but I also expect the more experienced and familiar ones to this market to find important information and helpful information in it. As we can see here in this slide number 2, the study brings analysis of demand, supply, company profiles, comprehensive data on imports, exports, Brazil's main trade partners, and so on. So to start, I'm going to give some market background, and I'll briefly summarize the current macroeconomic scenario in Brazil. As we know, after the longest and deepest recession in Brazil in now recent history, Brazil's economy has finally bottomed out and it is expected to strengthen in the coming quarters. And the good news is some economists here in Brazil, some local economists are still already expecting a bigger expansion and bigger GDP growth than my current forecast of 2.5% for 2018. It is important to mention that this better economic scenario is backed by increasing monetary stimuli that is very positive for at least the medium-term growth ahead, falling inflation that is giving more real wages to consumers, and a modest pickup in employment that it is a little bit faster at this point than we expected just some months ago. This next slide, slide number 4, brings a chart that shows the evolution of paper packaging, of the paper package marketing along the last 15 years and some future numbers that we bring in the study. As we can see in this chart, despite the current challenges, Brazilian demand for key grades like containerboard, boxboard, wrapping paper, and specialty papers have grown on average around 3% per year since the early 2000s. This is a pretty good growth number, even though we have the recession in 2014, 15, and 16. Brazil and Mexico are the biggest paper package markets in Latin America. And Brazil is also the only containerboard exporter in the region. So these effects should raise interest not only for the ones that are looking to supply paper package to Brazil or the local producers, but also to its potential competitors in the international market. So Brazil pretty much does not import paper packaging grades into the country, but it is an important exporter of containerboard, exporter of boxboard, and several other grades. Finally, it is important to mention that Brazil has a large growing population with tremendous economic potential and a huge consumer market to consume paper packaging grades. In this next slide, there are some of the highlights of the study, some more details about the study. So as we can see here, this study brings history and forecast for several variables as demand, supply, capacity, production, prices of the grades that we mentioned already: containerboard, boxboard, graph papers, and specialty and industrial papers grades. We also bring imports and exports of major grades to and from Brazil in a breakdown of key trading partners. This study brings annual and quarterly data from 2000 to 2022. So we already we already released annual data about Brazil Reese's website, but this is the first time that we are bringing quarterly data of all these variables, history and forecast. For the first time too, we are introducing a breakdown of the boxboard data, and we are breaking down boxboard into 5 main grades. There are FBB, WLC as one grade, SBS, CUK, CRB, and URB. And even if you are not familiar with the easy grades and the specifics of the boxboard data, we also bring detailed discussion in the study. We explain all these grades, all the meanings, all the usage of these grades, and we also bring a global comparison to better understand and compare the boxboard grades in Brazil to the other countries and to our competitors. We also bring some all the producers available in the country that we are aware of. So we bring producer profiles and cash cost curves, so we can compare the cash cost to produce paper package in Brazil with other regions, our competing regions in Brazil or in the South America, or even Europe or China. Also, we bring price forecasts for Brazilian containerboard and boxboard prices through 2022 in annual and quarterly basis. So if you are familiar with RISI data, there is a price watch that the journalists collect prices and publish prices for these grades. And this study brings price forecasts for all the grades that are published in PriceWatch. We also present a brief discussion of the macroeconomic scenario for the future and an analysis of the past couple of years and our numbers for GDP, for industrial production, for the exchange rate, and etc. This next slide, slide number 6, shows that there is a positive relation between GDP per capita and paper packaging consumption. As we can see here, the United States and Europe are very mature economies and have a higher level of paper packaging consumption. And Brazil is here in the middle, close to the left of the screen. But if as we are expecting that GDP is going to resume growth in Brazil, that consumption is going to return to the country, we can expect paper package consumption in Brazil to grow much faster in the future, and it has room to at least double in the next couple of years. This next slide shows some more details about the containerboard consumption in Brazil. As we can see, we at RISI we break containerboard into 4 grades. So kraft liner and recycled liner are considered the liner grades. Then we have recycled medium and semi-chemical medium that are the medium grades. And as we can see, kraft liner is considered a virgin grade, and this is very important. It represents a very big part of consumption in the country. 10 years ago, this was the case, and this is still the case in 2016. This fact is not surprising because Brazil is very abundant in the production of virgin fiber and pulp. This next slide, slide number 8, brings the same data for boxboard. So as I already mentioned, boxboard as a global product can be very difficult to classify because the grades and the specifics vary according to country from country to country. But in this analysis, we have broken the boxboard market into five main grades. there are SBS, SBB, and WLC together, CUK, CRB, and URB. And as we can see, over the last 10 years, the composition of Brazil's boxport data has not changed much. So SBB, WLC is the dominant grade in the boxport market in Brazil. Some final remarks about the study. So BRC is optimistic about the outlook for paper packaging demand in Brazil over the horizon. We see a tremendous growth rotation for Brazil's economy and as a consequence to the paper packaging market, we are assuming that the 2014 and 2016 recession is over, and we are going to see an economic recovery from now on. It is important to point out that we see a modest recovery. We have potential to grow much more, especially in this year and maybe next year. This is not our forecast. We are calling for a modest growth of 2.5% this year, but this could surprise us to the positive side. Paper package consumption per capita has room to at least double over the coming decades as we increase our GDP per capita and we consume more over the next decades. During the last couple of years, capacity expansions were subdued due to the challenging economic scenarios. So we saw lots of companies postponing investments and very few investments or company expansions over the last couple of years. We think that the situation is about to change. Brazil is very competitive when it comes to pulp, and consequently, we have a very great advantage in the production of paper packaging as well. As a result, and due to this hidden scenario for paper packaging abroad, we may see new investments and new developments in the country soon. That's it. Thank you so much. This next slide brings the details of the study, some of the bullet points of the study, and this is the page if you want to check any more information. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Amanda.
Okay. Too fast? I speak too fast, right?